travelers, and welcome to another episode of Tales of Teyvat, a Genshin lore podcast. Last week, we discussed Fontaine's biggest hero, as we discussed the new knave, Arlecchino. This week, I might have to rage quit the podcast as we discuss my most hated, or tied for most hated character in the whole game, Rhinedottir, aka Gold.
Are you looking for some experimentation? Well, check out our website, talesofteyvat.com, where Tiff has crafted a page for each of our episodes with both real and synthetic visuals to keep you warm in your icy mountain cave.
So I'm Gold. We just figured it out. End of episode. Got it.
Hate you. Goodbye. Where's my festering desire sword?
That's your mother-in-law. Be careful with how you talk to her.
Listen, we don't choose our family. We can choose who we kill.
Oh, no. Well, while you're on our site, while I'm still here, check out our past episodes and seasons, artist spotlights from the community for every topic, and some other goodies.
Finally, feel free to email us at talesofteyvatpod@gmail.com to let us know what you think of this week's episode and what topics you'd like to see in the future. Additionally, you can feel free to rate us wherever you listen to your podcasts, whether that be Apple, Spotify, or something else that I don't know. Additionally, feel free to give us a follow on YouTube. We're at Tales of Teyvat Pod, where you can check out some of the visuals we put together and some of our more dynamic episodes that we've done with the other podcasts and things. So, the time has come. Once again, for me to not be a happy camper. This is 2 episodes in a row that I haven't been the happiest person about the topic.
You love her, though. You hate her, but you love her.
You love to hate her.
I mean, if you're talking about Arlecchino, I like that her lore is important. If we're talking about Gold, I am happy that she gave me Albedo.
She birthed him.
That's it. I mean, I saw him in his little test tube. She held him in a test tube in her hands, man. That poor kid. He's got abandonment issues, creation issues, and my real issues, and it all comes from her. So now I have to ask you guys, are you on the hate wagon? Or are you going to try to convince me to enjoy her?
Or is our friendship about to end?
You said it, not me.
I mean, they definitely paint a picture of her that is negative. She definitely screwed up. But don't you kind of feel like you're waiting for the other shoe to drop because we don't know the extent of it? We know that, like, the way Alice talks about her seems like kind of like, oh yeah, that's my friend from back in the day. Like, I feel like whenever her full story gets revealed, there's going to be some part of it that makes us feel for her at least a little bit.
We're gonna find out that, like, she lost, like, a biological kid.
Yeah, there's gonna be some kind of reason to explain, like, why she was seduced by the power of the abyss or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I really have ultra strong feelings of hate toward her.
We'll change that.
I definitely think she's a villain of sorts, but I do totally think that you could be right, B, that it's gonna, like, get flipped on its head because nothing is what it seems. You know, so who knows what we don't know? You know, like, it just could be so many things. But I think I have the same kind of feeling toward her that I do some of those other unknown characters in the background, a lot of those Conrine people. Like, I'm always a little like, what's going on with you people down there? So, like, I don't know. I'm half and half, I feel like. I'm not a big proponent for her, but I also sometimes get her confused with Alice, and I'm just putting that out there. I won't in the lore part of it, but sometimes I hear them talking in, like, cutscenes and whatnot, and I'm like, oh, it's Alice. I'm like, oh wait, no, it's not. So Simulanka was hard for me.
Well, Simulanka too was different because they also introduced, like, the other witch that we really didn't talk about, and Genshin, and you're like, what is happening? Now, for travelers who are like, who the fuck is Gold? Why does Amanda hate her? What is happening? If you don't know who Gold Rhinedottir is their real name. They have quite a few nicknames. They go by Gold, they go by R, and they also go by Rhine. So Rhinedottir is a witch from the Hexen Circle who also was around during the Cataclysm, is supposed to be Conrian as far as we know. She was a great alchemist of her time, specifically researching the art of chemia, which we know is the same alchemy that albedo studies. Why is that? Because gold created albedo. If you did not know that, I am sorry that I just burst a bubble, or like,
This must be your first episode.
yeah.
When we call him Chalk Boy, it's
Yeah.
for a reason,
He
Yeah.
was birthed out of the star on his neck.
which is gross.
What? Calm down.
That's gross. That's a gross idea.
You were grown out of your belly button.
That grosses me out too.
His life force was glass blown into his vessel.
Basically.
Oh,
And then chalk came out of the vessels.
oh.
But yeah, so gold, the alchemy chemia that we learn about in Genshin is all about creating life. And we see that in Albedo's character teasers where he's creating a crystal fly, and then later on he starts to create one of those like baby Vishups. And Sucrose is like, oh no, he's not done, and now he's causing chaos. So the art of chemia can be very dangerous. And we know very specifically that Venti and Dainsleif are both very anti-chemia alchemy. They're both very on edge about it because they know it had a very big part in the cataclysm 500 years ago.
Yeah, and Venti's particularly worried about it being used and going out of control within Mondstadt city limits.
Yes, because he's very protective of his babies. The children of freedom, the children of the wind, the children of Mondstadt, and he doesn't want them to get hurt, which makes him very suspicious of Albedo. And he seems to be keeping an eye on him, just like a certain sister we know.
Yeah. He's like, hey, you're going to play around with your fancy little test tubes? Go on down to the Mari Javari. I don't touch it down there.
Oh, no. I mean, I'd be cool with that. I'd be like, let's go, Albedo, Mari Javari time. So if you are a traveler that does not know what the cataclysm is, I'm not explaining it. Play the game.
Wow.
If you don't know what the cataclysm is at this point, you haven't even finished Mondstadt. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, you should know at this point.
But Cliff Notes, the cataclysm for dummies, is that it was a great disaster that happened 500 years ago. It started in Conria. Everyone and their mother blames Gold, but Gold might not be the only one at blame here. We have recently found out through Dainsleif that there were 5 sinners of Conria. And these were 5 people who were super smart, like the heads of their area, and they caused some havoc. Now, Gold seems to be the one who gets the most shit for everything in the cataclysm and with Conria and its destruction. But it's important to note that the other 4 sinners, they didn't actually respond to the cataclysm. And that includes Gold. She didn't help to protect Conria, and none of them tried to help.
Right, and they were there when the cataclysm happened, which was during the Eclipse dynasty, the most recent dynasty that was running the show down in Conria. So when the cataclysm happened, we know via Dainsleif that the 5 sinners not only helped lead to it happening, but they also didn't show up to help the nation once it was being attacked and overrun and whatever was happening to it. And so Dane is very much like, I'll never because one of them was his brother. And he's like, I'll never forgive him. I'll never forgive any of the 5 sinners. And, I think the Conrian people started calling them that because they pieced out at the wrong moment.
Right. And, Brandon mentioned that this was all happening during the Eclipse dynasty. If you listened to last week's episode where we talked about Arlecchino, you would know that the last dynasty that was around was the Eclipse, and before that was Crimson Moon. The last ruler of the Eclipse dynasty was King Ermin, the one-eyed king. And I'm not gonna lie, some of the stuff I was reading was making me a little more sus of Ermin as I was doing the research for this episode.
According to Dane, they make it sound like he's the reason.
Yeah.
I think he was like the linchpin of how the cataclysm started, even though we know Rhinedottir was very much involved in unleashing a bunch of monsters around that time. Dane definitely made it seem like if the 5 sinners had actually banded together with him, they could have stopped King Ermin, which they also call the Vinster King, from doing whatever he did, which I don't know if we've ever talked about this, because I didn't even know about this little lore nugget until today. But It's revealed that the and this is and within glider lore, it's the wings of fate's course intertwined. And if you look at the description of that, it talks about how King Ermin took our sibling to the deepest depths of Conria and used them as a vessel by which unlimited abyssal power could be absorbed and became the key to the world's near annihilation. So not only was our sibling present during the cataclysm, they were what sounds like used against their will to start it.
Yeah. And you know what that made me think of as well? It made me think of Harry.
Yes.
Like, did we go down the same tunnel? Did our sibling go down the same tunnel as Harry?
Well, I don't know well, maybe, but it said it was made for children. Just disturbing.
I mean, we're like a mid-size model.
Yeah, maybe we could probably get away with squeezing into a child
Yeah.
thing.
Ether, go. I play Slumi and Ether squeeze in. You little twink ass, you can do it. But another really important thing to note, too, about King Ermin is that he started to use what we assume is forbidden knowledge to create technology. It kind of reminded me of our favorite genie in a bottle, Lillipar.
And her BFF Deshret.
Yeah, and I say Lillipar very unlovingly. That crazy bitch. At least she's entertaining.
Oh yeah, at least she's iconic. I would watch her reality show.
Oh my God, could you imagine Lillipar and Ju in a sitcom?
Oh my God.
He's so great.
Two broke demigods.
I'd love it.
But so, as we know, the heavenly principles, Celestia, whoever, they're really anti-forbidden knowledge. And the use of this forbidden knowledge mixed with whatever Gold was doing actually led to a lot of abyssal attacks. And it's not very clear if the abyssal attacks were on purpose, like was Gold attacking Conria with the abyss, or was the abyss escaping in, which is another trend we saw in Harry. And that eventually the Schwanenritter, who were a group of dudes, they took people to the surface and out of Conria, and that is when they actually saw them turn into monsters themselves. So that's when we start to see some people turning into hilly trolls, not all of them. And we do know that the head of the Schwanenritter, who decided to take over as Marshal when King Ermin fell, which, we got questions. We don't know how he fell, assuming that his monsters attacked him. I don't know. But the Schwanenritter guy who takes over is actually Anfortis Albrecht. Or Albrecht. I said Albrecht to be kind, because that's what they said in the story, but it's Albrecht to me, which is possibly Kaya's ancestor. We also know that they don't have any royal blood and that they took over. So there's a lot going on down in Conria.
By the way, I'm on team the monsters were created after the cataclysm started, or after something started.
The monsters were created after.
That's because the reason I think that is because there's a book in the game called Breeze Amidst the Forest. And the way that it's worded is the Eclipse Dynasty had fallen and Gold was corrupted by greed and ambition and created an army of monsters. But I know that there's probably conflicting information elsewhere, but to me it makes it sound like that the heavenly principles probably struck first because of whatever Ermin did with our sibling. And then Gold was like, oh shit, it's on, like Donkey Kong, and like unleashed all these monsters to combat what was happening.
The only thing that goes against that is the fact that she didn't defend Conria.
Well, yeah, exactly.
And when you say monsters, do you mean the abyssal monsters or like the forbidden knowledge robots were created afterwards?
The abyssal monsters that she created, which are said to be like shadowy monsters.
Like the Rift Hound, the Rift Wolves or Rift Hounds?
Yeah, I would think so. Right? Or like, remember in the Natland fighting all those abyssal creatures that look like weird purple shadow things.
True, yeah.
And they can like take on different forms.
Oh, the ones you see in Ochkanatlan a lot, right?
Well, no, also just during the Balloon Saga, where we're fighting all those battles.
But weren't some of those like normal monsters that were overcome? Okay.
Yeah. But so when they would open those little abyss portals, like some of those purpley, shadowy ones would come out.
Yeah, it became a Porque no los dos moment, right? Like,
yeah.
Well, we're told though that the Rift Hounds, or maybe that was an assumption, that the Rift Hounds were released when Conria went down. Maybe that's an assumption.
There's no like official say with the Rifties.
Hmm.
Now, when you look at the Rift Towns, you do have to look from two different perspectives as well, because you have like your normal Rift Towns, but you also have the Golden Rift Lord.
Oh,
Yeah.
the vagina wolf, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a vagina
Yes.
wolf. The wolf that emerges from the vagina.
Yeah.
On Surumi Island.
That's what Golden Wolf Lord means in Teyvatian.
VJJ Wolf.
But Tiff, I know what you mean because I think there are like little pieces here and there in the lore. I don't remember exactly where that make references to the Rift Wolves during the Cataclysm specifically. And the Golden Wolf Lord has lore in it that actually says that it trained the Rift Wolves to dissolve space, with their claws, to seek to take over worlds and make its name known. And it says after a previous defeat, the wolves have chosen, basically Surumi Island as their little site to prepare for the Wolf Lord's return. So that previous defeat makes me think they're referencing the Cataclysm. So
Yeah.
my interpretation is that they were sort of, flooding in during the Cataclysm and that they were somehow repelled out of the world.
Mm.
The Rift Towns were considered like the first wave during the Cataclysm. Like they came out and they made way for the other monsters.
They like brought the walls down.
Right, exactly. And so in the Cavarina quest, which is where we find out everything over in Pari Land, we got an episode on that. It's a lot. Like if you remember with the Pari, how the Pari are all made of Cavarina, which is like a light energy. When we do that quest in the desert of Sumeru, they describe the Rift Towns as echoes left from the battles fought so many years ago. It's noted with the Golden Rift Lord, like B was saying, that they got defeated and they didn't know what to do. And so most of them died. But a lot of them, when they did show up again, went to Surumi Island and kind of saw it as home base. And the next place you actually see them is out in Wolvendom in Mondstadt. And I think we all remember seeing them there for the first time being like, what the fuck? Why are they here?
At first I thought they were like trying to retcon something, but I think it makes sense in the lore because we know the abyss it's trying to creep back in to Teyvat and has been since before the beginning of the game. It makes sense that they're starting to like break through again because, you can tell that the game is sort of heading towards another kind of cataclysm.
Yeah, especially after everything that happens in Natlan.
Yeah. Yeah, they basically had their own little mini cataclysm in Natlan that we averted barely.
Yeah, honestly, which is kind of scary to look at. You're like, is this what we're going to end up having across all of Teyvat in Endgame? And how are we as the traveler going to be able to do anything about that?
They're gonna put us on a balloon and make us go fight.
Oh my god!
Teyvat.
If I have to go on a hot air balloon, can I just ride Dvalin again? Like he was much faster, much.
Can we just
actier.
take Risley's big boat? Because I feel like it's just as slow as the balloons.
Yeah,
We might as well go on
probably.
comfort.
It probably has cannons.
Yeah, maybe. We could just stay on the boat.
I would. We live on the boat in the
Drink
sky.
some like really crisp water out of a goblet. This is Nouvelette number 7.
There is another aircraft in the sky, so who knows? But so Gold created the Rift Towns, and Gold created a lot of things. So Gold is responsible for a lot of creations, but she categorizes her creations into 3 separate categories. And all of these categories are references to different types of soil IRL. I hate it. So you have the category of Alpha Soul, which is moderately leached soils that have high fertility. I don't know what that means. But this is your Rift Towns, what we were just talking about. And the next one you have is Hummus. It is not referring to the dip.
Darn it.
Not the dip. Got it.
You can dip into this dark organic matter if you want, but it's the decomposition of plants and animal matter, so I do not recommend it.
Yeah, that doesn't sound as appetizing as chickpeas.
No, definitely not. And your hummus organism that she created is Durin, for sure. And I know we have also talked about Elinus from Fontaine, most likely being another abyssal creation of Gold. So I think that Elinus might also fall as a hummus. I'm not really sure.
Uh,
Her final category is Cretaceous. And this actually doesn't refer back to soil, but to our favorite, chalk. But specifically in Latin, it means resembling chalk. And so albedo actually falls under this category. Because again, albedo is not a real boy. He just has many real boy tendencies.
Real boy tendencies. What does that even mean?
he's a real boy. He's just a real boy made out of chalk.
Yeah. Now, this doesn't categorize all of her creations. Like I said, we're really not sure where Alinus would officially fit under here. We would assume that the Golden Rift Lord would go under Alphasol with the Rift Towns, but we also have failed creations. Now, we don't know much about her failed creations. We know officially that she had one, but it is suggested that she had many, and the failed creation that we know of is Primordial Albedo, aka Susbedo, aka Subject 2, whatever you want to call him.
Yeah.
Albedo was a part of Gold's primordial human project, and that was her goal to make a real boy, which she did. And so we learned during the Susbedo event that we have an episode about if you want to go into more details, but basically we find out that there is someone who looks just like Albedo running around doing not great things. We find out that he's trying to impersonate Albedo and that he also made a Whopper Flower version of Albedo, aka Fellflower Albedo. You fight Fellflower Albedo, you realize that there is another guy still out there, and you find out that Primordial Albedo, Susbedo, Subject 2, is still around because when he failed to be the human boy that Gold wanted him to be, she fed him to Durin.
Her other experiment.
Yeah.
Yes. And apparently fed a lot of her failed experiments to Durin. So who knows what is going to go on in Dragonspine one day? It's just going to be an uprising of blonde twinks.
That's why you hang out there all the time, isn't it?
Just waiting for them to rise. I'm like, come on, guys. I did
That's
my hair
where
today.
Twink Tank number 2 is going to officially open
The
its
franchise.
doors.
There's a lot of raving around Durin's heart.
I think that this makes a not the worst mother in all of Teyvat. Because she
Yeah.
did get rid of Scaramouche Wanderer, but she didn't feed him to her son.
Yeah. I mean,
That's true.
I didn't feed my one son to my other son.
Yeah. I mean, I got standards.
And just so travelers know, if you haven't really looked into Dragonspine lore, you wouldn't know a lot about Durin. We do have an episode on Dragonspine as well. We'll link some of these episodes that might help you understand better if you haven't listened to them before in the website. But a quick recap is that Durin was slain, not slayed, but slain, because Twink Tank. By Slutty Venti, assumedly, and Dvalin during the Cataclysm when the Knights of Favonius could not fight Durin back. Even though Durin was just trying to have some fun, he thought that he was out there trying to make friends with the Mondstadians. Poor boy, he wasn't. He was killing them. And he actually killed Rostam, who was the wolf pup in Mondstadt and the Knights. And then Arudalin, who was another big guy down there, he was so struck with grief that he just gave up. And so Barbados was awoken by the people of Mondstadt. He summoned Dvalin, and they fought against Durin just to be poisoned and fall asleep again, to not be woken up again until present day game.
And grief-stricken Senora lost her mind and became the Crimson Witch of Flames because she was Rostam's girlfriend.
Right. She returns from Sumeru when it's safe to return home to find that Rostam is dead. But Durin, when he was slain, he fell onto Salvin Dagnir's ex-remains because Salvin Dagnir hadn't been around for a bit. Nothing had been going on Dragonspine. And now there's a snowy mountain surrounded by dragon bone and heart. And his blood is seeping into the mountain, which is causing the ley lines to go a little wacky. It actually reawoke the frost-bearing tree, which is the tree that you can go give the crystal agates to. And we know that his blood makes the monsters on Dragonspine stronger, a little crazier. When we run into the Whopper Flower that's actually Albedo, at first we're like, wow, Dragonspine's kind of crazy. And then we're like, oh no. This is Gold.
And if you played last summer's Simulalanka summer event, then you also know that Durin's heart is slowly regenerating itself, and it is thought that he will one day resurrect.
Hey.
No.
Hooray!
Yay! You can say that dragon spine is bathing in his blood.
Uh-huh.
No.
It really is, the whole mountain.
I know. That one, I think it's true. But, you know, in Simulanka, we meet baby Durin or mini Durin, and basically Andersodder, who is a witch in the Hexen Circle with gold, gave Durin a second chance and a new life, basically, and recreated Durin to try to give him a happy ending.
Ugh.
It's the truth.
What if you call it something else?
Not the massage kind.
Oh, no,
Not
no.
the massage kind.
Not the no, a storybook happy ending. A PG happy ending. And Durin actually finds that during the Simulanka quest where, you know, the Traveler, Navia, Nilu,
Your
and
favorite.
Kirara work with us, and we're able to free Durin, and we meet Mini Durin, and Mini Durin has basically decided that he is now Skara's younger brother and that he will be tagging along. We do get to see Albedo, Scaramouche, Durin, and Klee all interact, and Fischl, she's there too. And Albedo basically says to Wanderer, I might need your guys' help soon.
I was going to ask, did you feel a certain way that Mini Durin becomes close with Wanderer and not Albedo?
His actual brother?
Well, I feel like Mini Durin has no idea that that's his brother. And I think Albedo, when Albedo hears that there's a Durin, he's kind of like, what? What? Like, I feel like he's like got his hand on his sword, like, what? What are we doing? Personally, I think Albedo has some trauma from his bloodline, and I don't think that he would necessarily be excited to have Durin calling him a brother. I think it might be a little like PTSD for him, even though he's never actually dealt with Durin.
Okay.
Because for travelers who don't know, Albedo, while his creation date is unknown, we minimally know that he was created after the Cataclysm. So he would not have known Durin. Now, we do know, however, that Gold was attempting to make Albedo prior Cataclysm because she fed Susbedo to Durin before he died during the Cataclysm.
Yeah.
So, you know, a lot of stuff going on there.
He says to us that he is much older than he appears. That's as far as we get on his age.
Albedo.
Yeah.
Same boy.
Yeah.
I look younger than I am.
That's true. You have good skincare, both you and Albedo.
Yeah, we use the same thing. It's just blood.
Is
It's chalk.
it chalk based?
It's chalk blood paste. And sometimes a little dessert. Albedo has a sweet tooth, man. Apparently, Child thinks that we have a sweet tooth as well, but that's besides the point.
Does he put chocolate on his spiders?
Ew.
No, he doesn't. He likes them savory, typically. He almost eats spiders like a pretzel.
That's disgusting.
Yeah.
And an insult to pretzels everywhere.
What if he ate Bambi?
No.
Oh. But he dug her up and was just like, snack.
We never saw the body.
No, we didn't.
So I'm just saying.
It was probably spicy, like with all the balefire remnants.
Yeah.
He probably loved it. He's probably like, let me get the Bale Moonfire.
That's like his version of hot Cheetos.
Or Takis. Like.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit about Gold and some of her creations. Now, we can assume that there are more than that.
Yeah.
I also have an assumption that I think she created a technology that we recently learned about in Natlan.
Oh.
So I don't know who caught this, and this will be the latest Archon spoiler, giving you a heads up now for anyone listening who hasn't done it. But if you remember in Natlan, we learned that the reason Capitano was able to hold on to all the souls of the Conrian soldiers that fell with him for so long was because of this Conrian technology that he was gifted that would allow him to hold on to souls.
Oh, right.
Yeah. In his heart, right?
It was something with that, yeah. And that's why he never really sleeps, because he's always hearing like the screaming of the souls. Him and Arlecchino probably got along great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm very curious if Gold created that technology, because we know that Gold would go into the abyss and bring out these consciousnesses, which could be souls.
Yeah.
We know that Durin was originally a consciousness that she found in the abyss, and the Linus. So is it possible that she was going into the abyss collecting taking souls and putting them into bodies.
And is it possible that they used Bale Moon blood fire to make that device?
Mm-hmm.
Since we know that that can like absorb souls or memories or whatever of dead people.
And is it possible that Albedo is a consciousness pulled from the abyss as well?
Maybe.
Oh, so like a lioness where he was a vessel to a soul?
Yeah, so Alinus was the soul, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And then she made a body.
Yeah.
So like
Like, oh, you're a
Albedo was a
dragon now.
soul that she created a body to house.
Right. Which I have some questions because there's like this one point where like a sage of some sort is mentioned. And I think it's actually one of the sinners. I think it's Hieropatir the Wise.
Mm-hmm.
When we think of the wise, we think of wisdom, right? Like we think Nahida usually, in Genshin at least. In real life, I think of wise chips. They were on sale this week. So
Next to the Takis.
next to the Takis, next to the spider legs. But my question here is, could the wise be a sage? Because we've heard a lot about like a great sage that lived in Conria. And I'm curious, for those who have finished Ochkanatlan, there's a dragon sage that we hear about. And I'm curious if this sinner could have happened to be the dragon sage that we hear about. And is it possible that Gold was actually taking consciousnesses from the abyss and putting them into dead dragon bodies?
See, my first thought was that Rhinedottir, or however you say his name, it's a good bet that he is a sage, because isn't he the one where his name actually is one of Odin's names in mythology, and it means sage?
Yep.
But my first thought was, well, maybe he's the one-armed sage that people saw fighting, but then that doesn't make sense because the five sinners were supposed to have not fought, right?
But maybe Dainsleif wouldn't know. No, Dainsleif would know because Dainsleif fought with the one-armed sage.
Mm-hmm. So it probably can't be him, right?
But it's a good thought.
Yeah. But maybe the dragon sage is a better bet. But then, oh my God, I mean, what if there's just a bunch of dragon people in Conria and we don't even know?
I think it's totally possible, and I think Gold would be all about it.
And maybe the forbidden knowledge with all that technology is something the dragons brought in.
Yes. And that's how like all this technology got brought to Ermin as well.
Yeah. Because we know they can make technology, although who knows, because they made the source, what is it called? The source mechanism or whatever. But then didn't someone say like it was a little too advanced for them to fully figure out?
Yeah, but if they had a dragon sage down there helping.
Yeah, because he was probably special. Yeah.
And while we're talking about one of the other sinners, so we had the five, I just want to review the five sinners really quickly. The hard part about these five sinners is that we do not know how any of them actually got along with Gold. We have no idea what their relations were, except for the fact that they worked together and that they decided to not help Conria.
They're all bitches.
Right. So outside of the wise, we have the visionary Vedrafolner. Now, this is Dainsleif's brother, his older brother.
Yeah. And the Dark Crystal from the Clotar questline / Kari Bear.
And we know that Skirk, when we run into Skirk and Fontaine, that Skirk knows of them and thinks that they have a great esteem across the land and is kind of surprised that we've never heard their name.
Mm-hmm. We also know that he probably created the stone slates that contain Fontaine's prophecy and left them to be found many years later. And that also, at some point in Conria, he was imprisoned and blinded in both eyes. And I think Dainsleif actually like got some people together and they went and rescued him.
They literally did a rescue mission. Like, I just imagine Lloyd Forger from Spy X Family and his little gagagoons going in and trying to save him, like, you know, coming down on the ropes. And like, like very spy movie, like James Bond. I was just like,
I wonder why he was imprisoned and blinded.
Yeah.
He was they say it's for quote unquote giving oracle.
Oh yeah. The oracle.
Was that a part of the happy ending?
So I'm wondering, because we know that he we believe that he placed the Fontaine prophecy stones and that, you know, Mona actually even says that only a true visionary could have prophesized what happened in Fontaine, saying my master could have probably done it or someone else in the Hexen Circle, but it wasn't. Like she assumes it wasn't one of them. So this guy must have been really great at seeing the future if he got in trouble for giving Oracle. And his rescue actually is said to have temporarily saved Conria. So it's almost suggested that like Dainsleif it stopped the cataclysm almost, and then it happened anyway.
Yeah, I guess it does make sense that if he has visions of the future, that is a good reason why he might have been blinded. I mean, King Ermin had one eye, so maybe he tried to use one of Vedderfolner's eyes.
Maybe. I mean, it's interesting because all the Conrian big deal men that we've met so far or heard about have one eye, you know? Piero, Kaya, Ermin. Now we've met Clothar and he doesn't have one eye, but Clothar is a madman. It feels like he has one eye.
He could have lost an eye somewhere along the lines.
True.
This is all making me think of Fischl a lot.
Oh, Fischl and her Ermin.
Her one eye that she keeps hidden because of all the visions.
Oh, I wonder if the Princess Fischl story is a story actually from Conria or inspired by Conria.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Oh.
Because I will say well, a lot of people say that, you know, Conria is very like Norse and Viking-esque. There is a lot of German references as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that would make sense.
And there's like, isn't there a lot of world jumping in that story?
Yes.
Yeah.
Interesting. Who is really Princess Fischl?
Mm-hmm.
It's Lumine.
Maybe.
Maybe that's why we got dragged down the hearth. But also, just as we know, Brandon mentioned that the visionary, who is Dainsleif's brother, is the Dark Crystal. That is the Dark Crystal that we find during the Dainsleif quest with Caribert and Clothar. And Clothar, as we know, is Caribert's dad. He's also an Alberic. We're not really sure how he is related to Anfortis or how he is related to Kaya, but he is drawn in by this power. And it's really interesting because the visionary says something inside of our heads during this flashback where we're seeing our siblings' memories that he doesn't see himself as a hero or a god and is confused when Clothar and our sibling end up bowing to him as a crystal. It's also very reminiscent of the, what is it called? The Forsaken statue? The upside down statue in Mondstadt that never gets referenced ever again.
Yeah, the
Defiled.
Defiled, yeah.
Statue, yeah.
And so if you don't remember during I believe that's the first Dainsleif quest.
Yes, it's the We Shall Be Reunited.
We find an upside down Barbados statue that is shining with abyssal power with a dead man at its feet. And it's also chained up like this crystal is. So it's curious that there's a lot of comparisons. Were they trying to recreate something for the visionary to come through? I don't know.
Mm-hmm. The other interesting thing, too, is there's 6 chains on the crystal. So there was thought that maybe it represents the 5 sinners and Dainsleif.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh.
Mm-hmm. Or the 6 eyeballs over Nova.
Oh, that bitch got more than 6.
She's got 7 that we know of. Which is interesting. She has 1 eye for every archon.
Oh, well, shit. Look at that.
And who is the biggest eye for? I don't know. Probably me. So then we have Rhinedottir Gold, who we're talking a lot about now. Then your next one is
Sertologi,
aka the Foul. Now this is Skirk's master. And if you remember, Skirk is the person who trained Child when he fell into the abyss. We met her in Fontaine. She literally threw a tennis ball and Child followed.
A tennis ball being the all-devouring narwhal.
I think a Child might have been the tennis ball and the narwhal followed.
The narwhal is her master's pet.
Yeah. And she Pokemoned him.
Yeah.
I just imagine her with one of those like ball thrower things that you have for like dogs that's supposed to make the ball go farther. And she says like, yeet, and Child goes flying.
Yeah, she seems to have some kind of power or mastery over the abyss, right?
Mm-hmm.
She can create like portals, just like we've seen our sibling do. And her legs and her arms are kind of like fading into like an abyss texture.
Yes. And we can assume that Child's foul legacy is a skill he learned either from Skirk or from the foul himself.
I think he learned it from her, but she was just passing what she learned from Surdology down to him. Because I think there's somewhere where it says like, but she didn't even come up with that. She learned that from her master or something.
Yeah.
And then she eye rolls and she's like, leave me alone.
Yeah.
I will kill you all.
You want to see a narwhal?
You want to see him come back? So Skirk also says that he is pursuing some form of perfection, which also seems to be what Gold is looking for. But I also wanted to look up Surdology and see what it meant, because it seems like everything is pulling from Norse mythology. So Surdology is actually the name of a bright sword or flame that is wielded by a fire Jotun suitor. I had no idea what the fuck that was. So a suitor is a fire giant, and they typically serve as a guardian of the realm of fire, which is one of two realms that exist before the beginning of time in Norse mythology. The other one being Niflheim, not Nippelheim. There's an F. It's Niflheim. This means home of the mist, but they say it's primarily a realm of primordial ice and cold. So all I can think is that that's where March 7th from Starfield is from. So we know it's just frozen in primordial ice. So I do think it's interesting that he is the guard, a giant guard of the fire realm. And we know that he's got something to do with the abyss if he taught Skirk and Child the foul legacy. And then we have our final and fifth sinner, which we literally know nothing about. And that is Rarir, aka Racher of Solnari. Nothing about them.
I think I looked up Racher and it means like basically Avenger.
Yeah, so this is Tony Stark.
Definitely Tony Stark, the Tony Stark of Conria.
Yeah, we just don't know it yet. He's actually one of Lilpar's like 18 kids or 18,000 kids.
He built all the machinery.
He built all the machinery, and he takes this fucking snap away from Thanos at one point. But yeah, you're right about the term for Avenger. And then in Germanic mythology, Rarir is a ruler who avenges his father's death, and his father was murdered. So more avenging. I don't think Tony really avenges his father's death. I mean, Captain America doesn't let him. Bucky survives. Not to be confused with Buck in 911.
Oh, Lord.
I like that you only had to make that reference for yourself, because you're like, wait, let me put compartments of my Buckies.
The dots are connecting in her mind. Like she's going to write a fan fiction tonight with Tony Stark, Bucky, and Buck set into that.
And Dainsleif. Just a joke in Dainsleif. It's actually Dainsleif's lover. I don't know. But yeah, so those are the 5 sinners. And that is like Gold's OG posse. And at some point, she ends up meeting Alice and she joins the Hexen Circle.
Yeah. We don't really know which one came first, right? We don't know if she was in the Hexen Circle before she became, in this like elite group of sinners.
We definitely don't know. I've been assuming that the Hexen Circle came later, but that's only because some of them were human and they died.
Right. I know they died centuries before like modern time Teyvat.
Ooh, God.
Because Scarlet, who was one of the human one's successors, she has a conversation with Alice and she says, Alice, you've never recognized one of her successors and it's been centuries. And Alice is like, yeah, but you're pretty cool. I guess I'll talk to you.
Alice is like, don't remind me of that person.
No. So, I mean, what does centuries even mean? Like it could be more longer than Cataclysm or shorter.
So are we thinking then that she was a part of the Hexen Circle first and then at some point became a sinner, and maybe that's even when her and Alice start to tie away from each other or pull away from each other?
Maybe, because Alice does say, like, I just think of the Hexen Circle as like friends that I hung out with when I was younger. So she definitely makes it seem like they're not still like hanging out.
We just know that she took Albedo in.
Right.
Yeah. She took Albedo in when Gold pieced out.
Which I think could be more of even a selfish thing for Alice,
Because she collects children.
She does. And maybe she was like, I need a babysitter.
She's like, that Chemia skill of yours, that's going to be great on Teyvat Has Talent.
Can you make a chair? Do it again.
Can you make a chair? But can you make a chair spin around for you?
Ooh la. But yeah, so we know that she's in the Hexen Circle, and I think that's a great point. The Hexen Circle must have come first, which means that she was bouncing in and out of Conria and hanging out in Mondstadt, right?
Yeah, well, we knew before Cataclysm they were, they weren't behind a locked door. That's how even Clothar went and had his little tryst.
Yeah, we just know that not a lot of them left necessarily.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like there was that much travel in general. Like even when we see with Natlan, they have their other reasons why they don't kind of leave that area. But people weren't really visiting that much, except for like I would say it's probably more of like the Sumeru, Liyue, Mondstadt people who seem to be a little bit more traveled.
Yeah.
It was easier for them to travel to, I guess. But they all seem so well known too that it seems very easy to think that they were just all over the place.
Right.
I have a theory that the Hexen Circle, that like each witch comes from a different world.
A different world or a different nation?
World.
Do you think they're all like descenders? And since the Hexen Circle is very well known for going into Irminsul and fucking with it, that they just remove themselves as descenders?
Maybe something like that. I just think that they're either from different worlds or they've obviously been to different ones, or at least know about them. But there's so much we don't know about the Hexen Circle. And have either of you read this book series, The Little Witch and the Undying Fire?
A little bit of it.
So it's in the Imaginarium Theater, which is where you can find it. And what makes it especially relevant to this episode is that they mention in it that Rhinedottir is rarely in a lucid state. So that's not exactly surprising, but it is kind of good to know that, like, oh, I guess she's like kooky most of the time, or there's, something affects like her mental presence, which, who knows what happened to her exactly. But I just wanted to quickly share a couple crazy things that are in this book series, which you kind of, each chapter of it, there's 7 chapters, and each one kind of makes it seem like it's written by one of the different witches. So the one that we think Rhinedottir wrote is chapter 3. But some of the crazy stories in this book is that, and again, it's probably all like fairy tales that are being used to relay some type of true thing, but it's all told like stories or, fairy tales. And so this one thing that I thought was so crazy was that they talk about there being a blood green moon in the sky. Because it was sort of representing the fact that most of the people on the Little Witch's world were Nephilim, which means part god and part human.
Which, just to clarify, in this book, you're following the story of a little witch.
Yes, yeah. But it's weird. It's weird because each witch in the Hexen Circle like takes a turn writing the story of the Little Witch, and you get the feeling that like all of them are the Little Witch, and so they're just telling like different stories. But so there's one of them involves a blood green moon, which is supposed to represent the blood of people in the Little Witch's world, because they're all Nephilim, which is part human and part god. And the moon was green because it was a mixture of red human blood and god blood, which is gold in color. And then the chapter that Rhinedottir supposedly wrote, chapter 3, that one talks a lot about killing these demon kings, which gives a witch more power, and then encountering a mimic demon king, which was like a mold that her companions ingested, and it turned each of them into what they desired to be. So one of them became a robot. One of them, who was a man, became a beautiful maiden. So like lovely trans moment, love that for her. And then one became a pirate, which she was kind of like, I don't know what's up with that in this story. She's like, I don't know why they became a pirate, but they did.
You know what that made me think of, though? Like, my first thoughts when I heard those?
What?
I was like, oh, it's ruin golems. So the technology. It's Angelica from Harry.
Yeah, I did wonder that too. That did cross my mind. A beautiful maiden.
And Kaya. That was like my thought process. And Kaya says that his grandfather was a pirate.
Ooh, yeah. And we know that gold was like in the Eclipse Dynasty, so that could totally be a thing. So I love that. Anyway, I highly recommend anyone listening to this, you go and read the Little Witch and the Undying Fire. It's very thought-provoking and it will spark a lot of theories in your mind when you read it.
My favorite part of it is like they eat this mold, and she says that, when I eat the mold, I didn't change because I was already seeing myself as perfect.
Yeah, she's like, I was already quite fond of myself.
And she said that like when she went to eat the mold, she like broke a piece off and all the other mold disappeared. And she's like, how stupid, it's suicidal. Like, what is happening? Then she was like, it's not as bright as I thought it was, this mold species. It's so disappointing.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's like it's kind of scientific. Like she talks about things from like a biological perspective, which makes sense because she's all about creating life, you know?
She sounds like Tignari when she does her research, this little witch.
Yeah, like a cocky Tainari.
Yeah, where she's like writing down her notes and she's always like, oh, that's an interesting thing the species did. Jog, jog, jog.
And there's like a chipmunk demon king, which I thought was funny.
That's Tiff's favorite.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I was going to say, now I got to go read it. It's Chipmunk in.
The chipmunk demon king.
Perfect.
And she like liked that demon, right? Like that was like, she was like, he's chill. I'm cool with him.
It made me think of the abyss capybara that you fight in Natland.
Oh, that's interesting.
You remember the one, right?
Yeah.
Where everyone was like, how do you kill it?
I was like, where did this fucking bitch come from?
I still don't think I've killed him. I don't think I've gone back over there.
Don't even bother.
I was like, I don't want to kill a capybara. I love them.
Murder.
I stayed away from that hole.
But it'll give you more power.
No, but Tiff, the power. The power of the crystal.
Anyway, I just wanted to share that about the Hexen Circle. There's still so much we don't know about them. We don't know a lot about their timeline. We don't know where they came from exactly. We don't know where some of them went.
The most we really know about them is from their successors. So we know a lot from Alice's daughter, Klee, from Scarlet, who is a Shneznayan, who took over for, I always forget her name, but one of the Hexen Circle members was like the original mayor of Shneznaya. And Scarlet is a replacement of that witch many years later. And then you have Mona, who is the successor, presumably, of Barbaloth. And then you have Albedo, who is the kid / possible successor of Gold.
Then there's Nicole.
And then Nicole.
And then there's Nicole just hanging out in Irminsul.
In a teacup half the time talking to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really a shame that they haven't done like an event since Windbloom where we've been able to see Mona, Albedo, Scarlet, and Klee together. Like, I think they have a really great opportunity to give out Hexen Circle lore, especially now that they all know basically who each other is. I mean, Albedo literally calls Alice Aunt Alice in front of Mona.
Yeah, and I think they kind of do that in Simulanka too, right?
Albedo doesn't go anywhere near Mona in Simulanka.
Oh, yeah, she's just there. She's over by the old hag.
She's yelling at the Barbaloth statue.
We get little hints about Barbaloth from Mona during that. So they do drop like little tiny things. But you're right. I mean, there's a lot of potential for like all these successors to come together. Like we need to see more of Scarlet for sure. And I'm sure we will eventually, but I feel like they're really saving the Hexen Circle for like some kind of moment.
Yeah.
It's going to be like the Harbingers or something where we like really get to know them somehow.
So annoying. I mean, we got a cute cutscene in that Windbloom, of course.
I just think it proves they're tied up so much in endgame lore.
Yeah.
They're really stringing it out, you know?
It's just very frustrating as a lore person, right? Like someone who's interested in these story pieces because they just stop bringing things up.
Yeah.
And I know we're beating a dead horse with a bat, but Susbedo, like you gave us Susbedo, and then Albedo never had an event ever again that focused on him. You never gave him a second story quest. You didn't give Klee a second story quest. You didn't give Mona one. So like these people who could
You
at
didn't
least
give Tainari a cutscene.
you didn't give Tainari a cutscene, like, but it's like these people that could at least be connected to Susbeto, which is such an important lore piece in Mondstadt and probably in the whole game because it's suggestive of Gold as a whole, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Like they just, I don't know. I know Mondstadt is gonna be big in the end, and I know they're probably hiding a lot of Mondstadt because of that, but they gotta give us something else. They have to give us a nugget of something at this rate.
I'm sure we will learn more as we learn more about the sinners. I mean, we
Yeah.
know Skirk is coming eventually, which I think it's safe to assume that we're going to learn more about Sertology at least when we get
Right.
Skirk.
And Child.
Yeah, I do think it's on the way. It's just, we just got to wait.
Right. It's just so frustrating.
One thing we should talk about, though, is what happened to Gold. Why is she not around anymore?
Yeah.
So I want you to picture this for a moment, right? You're just a little baby alchemist, a little twink baby alchemist. And you're
I'm like shaking my rattle. And I'm like, hit me, baby, one more time.
yes. I'm looking for Twink Tank. I've heard that it exists, but I'm not sure where it exists. We also can assume that this happened kind of recently, just like maybe in the last 5 to 10 years in Teyvat. So we are this little alchemist twink following his mother around. We're exploring, we're going into domains, and we come across something called the Heart of Nibarius. Now, the Heart of Nibarius could be a lot of things, and after we tell the story, we will get into what the Heart of Nibarius could be. But all we know for certain is that it's an artifact that Albedo and Rhinedottir come across deep in a domain. And she and Albedo left the domain, and she kind of sat on it, and she looked at Albedo, and she's like, listen, I gotta go get milk from the store. I'm gonna take the Heart of Nibarius with me, and here's a note. Go hang out with your Aunt Alice. And Albedo's like, okay, I'll see you when you get back from ShopRite. And Albedo goes to Aunt Alice's. He's hanging out. He's playing with Klee. He's teaching her how to make better bomb ammo. And Mom never comes back. So then Alice ends up also having to go out and do shit. Probably because Gold was like, yo, bitch, I need you. It's like they're like high school besties that are now like committing crimes together in their 50s. And she's like, I need your help. Let's go. She's like, I told her I'd be ride or die back then. I gotta keep going. Albedo ends up going at Alice's recommendation to the Knights of Favonius. He becomes the head alchemist, chief alchemist there, and him, Kaya, and Jean become in charge of Klee. Great. I love that. Before Rhinedottir leaves, she turns to her only son, her only known living son. She doesn't realize that she has so many other sons out there, sons and daughters of the Rift Towns and everything. And she goes, my son, I need you to find the truth of the world. And she leaves and to go find milk at the store and never come back.
With an artifact.
So poor Albedo, it has abandonment issues. He's like, my mother left me and then my aunt left me. And my brother's going to kill us all.
He seems fine about it, though.
No. He's masking.
It's the weed.
Okay.
It's high all the time.
And now he's friends with Tainari. He's probably tripping all the time, too.
Mhm.
He's dropping balls.
He's dropping balls. And then coughing it out. It's my favorite thing from the episode.
Cough it up, boy.
Oh my god, it was so funny. I was like, cough it up, boy. That should be a sticker. But it's just like Child in that like meme with the mouth open, like the
Oh god.
so good. Anyway, so the Heart of Nibarius. Tiff has a really interesting theory on this because we have no idea what the fuck Nibarius is.
Yeah, it just is. It's listed. They just say it, and then they're just like, poof, she's gone.
Mm-hmm.
Don't need it for anything else. The first part of the theory I actually read on the Wikipedia page for Rhinedottir, and one of the fans said that Nibarius is the Tsaritsa, and she lost her heart and thus has no more love left for her people. And
Okay.
I was like, that's interesting. Especially, I want to say like the Naberius is actually would be like her Ars Goetia name. Like it could be potentially because Naberius is an Ars Goetia's name. So that like that would kind of tie it in. But what I was then thinking from that was, could it be that she was like, I have this thing and I know it belongs to the Tsaritsa. What can I use to give this to her? What do I need? I need the Gnosis because I'm trying to make life and a god, basically. So I'm wondering if it is the Tsaritsa or is a part of the Tsaritsa, like, or, you know, maybe not. It might be her gnosis. It could be her literal heart for all we know. But like she's using it as a bargaining chip to be like, hey, you get me the Gnosis, I'll give you your heart back.
Right.
Because we also hear that she will at some point have love again. She'll be a god once again and have love for her people again.
Now it makes sense why the Harbingers are just starting to get their act together with getting the Gnosis too. Like, why now would be a big question.
So I really like that idea that maybe, you know, there is that connection there.
Yeah, that is a fun theory.
You know, like I said, the beginning part, when I read it, I was like, ooh, I was like, okay, maybe I can go for this. And then I just started going down my own little path, which has now also led me into Brave New World, the Aldous Huxley novel. If you're familiar with it, it's a dystopian novel back in the 30s when basically they started having test tube babies because it was
Albedo.
Yeah, it was too savage to have children. And it started making me go, well, we never do actually see babies. Nobody is just born. We see children, but we never really know where they come from. Is everybody from a test tube?
Is everyone from the fountain?
Yeah, everybody, they had to go wish at the fountain for their baby.
It is a good point, though. You're right. We never see anyone get born. We've never seen a baby.
Yeah. And like in Brave New Worlds, the whole idea is that they've moved to everything's artificial. There's a lot of technology, a lot of advanced technology. There's a lot of government control, conformity, and things like that. So it has this interesting side to it where, you know, could it actually even be? Because we know that they like the stories getting pulled from different places. We've already said in this episode alone, the Ars Goetia, the Norse mythology. We know that the Fatui Harbingers are the Commedia dell'arte. So like they have a lot of like pieces that they pull from here and there. I'm wondering if this world state could be like Celestia kind of idea of we need to keep people in line because we need them to do what we want them to do. And because of that, they don't have individuality and they don't go and do things as barbaric as having babies, which is for some reason one of the things that stuck with me the most. Like I originally had to read Brave New World when I was in high school, and it like immediately became one of my favorite books. And I was just so amazed by the fact that this book from 1932 is talking about test tube babies, like a production line type thing. That kind of a system that was like all new then. And it's like the idea that this was written then. And I think it was in the future because I think he actually wrote it like in 1900. So it was like 30 years in the future. But like shit was actually happening, you know, because like, you know, like test tube babies and stuff like that. Well, you don't hear them typically called that anymore. But like in the 90s, that's what it was like the big thing. All these, you know, were test tube babies. And I was like, oh my God. I'm like, how did he know? Was he from the future?
Was he a time traveling wizard?
Yeah, maybe.
I don't have anything to say really about the Heart of Naberius, except that Naberius is a demon and Marquis of Hell, of course, from the Ars Goetia as well. They're typically like a three-headed dog, said to have a deep, harsh voice.
Like Cerberus.
Oh.
Yeah, like Cerberus. They're actually like kind of interchanged in some like histories, like in different mythologies, but in the Ars Goetia, Naberius. And the only thing I can say is that if it's not the Tsaritsa's heart, that it's like a heart of like a ex-archon or god that has died. You know, so maybe even if it's like the Tsaritsa was in love with the prior cryo-archon, because we know she's not the first. Maybe it's his heart or her heart, and that the Tsaritsa is trying to bring her love back to life, hence the doctor. I hate him.
I don't have any strong theories about it, but one that I've had before that I think is fun is that it could be the Genesis Pearl from the Battle Pass cutscene.
Yeah.
But that's a little iffy because I think they're probably talking about Lumine, but maybe Lumine found it and then stashed it somewhere and then Gold found it.
Or Lumine is gold.
Yeah.
I'm just saying it's possible, especially since the headcanon of the game is that Lumine is the Abyss twin, you know?
That Little Witch in the Undying Fire, by the way, has all this other crazy shit about like how like heavenly things that come down that are like planets are called archons, and that most worlds have 7, but then there's also virtuals that are like theorized ones, and that there are either 1, 2, or 4, and it just makes you wonder a lot about like, are there alternate worlds that are sort of tied to the same system as the planet that Teyvat is on?
Yeah, and interesting that they're called like planets, like suggesting the archons fell from the sky even.
So more fun things to think about.
Do we think that Teyvat's a flat Earth? Like, are they
No.
are they the flat Earthers?
No, we've talked about this before. No
Yeah.
flat Teyvat.
But I do think there's other continents.
In the mist.
In that book, they talk a lot about the westernmost, like magical continent, the planet. But they also talk about like the dark woods or something that's like, I guess, to the east or somewhere else.
That's interesting.
So makes you wonder if we'll get to like the end of the game and then they'll just reveal another continent.
Yeah.
They're like, here we go. 10 more chapters.
Yeah.
I mean, they gotta do anything to drag it out, right?
Yeah.
And it's so mad. I'm so mad over here about the lore, but I'd be totally cool with it at the same time.
Yeah.
I think they should do what they did with Honkai Impact and just do a part 2. Like it keeps going, but the story pivots into something different.
Maybe the next part will go directly into the Hexen Circle. It'll bring us all over to the witches and stuff in the dark wood.
Or we play through our siblings half of the adventure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and get it all the piece together. So I do have one other like quick factoid. It's more about Albedo in the end, but it does tie into Durin. So we have a weapon called Festering Desire. And this was actually from the first Albedo event that was out there, not to be confused with the Sus Beto event. So it is a limited time sword. I don't have it. Womp womp. For a while, it actually was Albedo's best in slot, and then Cinnabar became his best in slot, and now Chiori's sword is his best in slot. Albedo says it's a really old sword. It was made by this blacksmith who went missing many, many years ago after making it. Eventually, treasure hoarders ended up with it. It was rediscovered when they took in like a hoard from the treasure hoarders, and somehow Albedo ends up with it. He says that it kind of like sucks energy from people, but for some reason doesn't seem to pull from the traveler. And it is suggested that people who like touch the sword could die, type of thing. And Albedo says that he actually discovered that the sword is coated in powder made from Durin's remains, which is, you know, great time. Someone grinded a bone down out there. And Albedo even goes as far as considering that the sword could be like a living being, kind of similar to the sword in Kazua's story quest. And he wonders if it being a living being is why the creator went missing, which again goes back to the Kazuo story quest, because wasn't it like the creator of the sword was in the sword? And Albedo is like suggesting that here as well. But tying this back to Gold, the description of the sword is supposedly by Gold. And it says, unborn life, unfulfilled wishes, tragic dreams at the edge of the universal darkness that could never come true. Indwell my body and descend onto this world. That's kind of where I got the idea that maybe Gold is sucking the souls out and using the same technology as Capitano.
Right.
But I just think that's interesting. And again, it's another limited time event. But in the end of this event, the traveler ends up purifying the sword, as we do. And then Albedo bottles the rest of the power up and just kind of takes it with him, which I'm not going to lie, I love you, Albedo, but why? It's a little suspicious.
I mean, let's hope Susbedo doesn't get a hold of that.
Maybe it was Susbedo. Who knows?
He's like, hey, Joel, come here. I want you to try this new juice.
Ew.
Then Joel becomes like an abyssal monster.
He becomes Wappy 2.0.
Yeah.
And then Wappy 1.0 is his dad, and he's like, yeah! There's 2 of us now!
Poor Joel. I had one other factoid as well, which is just about Rhinedottir's name. and that it might be a reference to Rheingold in Richard Wagner's opera cycle Der Ring des Nibelungen, which means the Ring of
Yes.
Nibelung, which is significant because we know that the King of the Dragons was named Nibelung, right?
Yes.
And that opera cycle is about a dwarf named, guess what? Alberic, who fashions
shit.
a ring out of Rheingold, which is a hoard of gold that was guarded by 3 water nymphs called Rhine maidens. And I love that it's a ring because maybe that is like the ring that Dane has that prevents him from transforming.
Oh my God, stop. I love it and hate it. It's too coincidental.
Yeah, it's like a lot of names that come together in like a weird way, right?
Oh, definitely. That's insane.
Yeah, so I don't know too much about the opera cycle other than that. It's the Ring of the Nibelung. I think Nibelung is supposed to be Alberic's last name.
Oh, interesting.
So this dwarf named Alberic Nibelung, because I think it's like the family name. I could be wrong, but I think it's the family name. But yeah, fashions the ring out of Rheingold. I don't know what the ring does or anything. I haven't
Is she
looked into
dead?
it. Is she the third descender?
So like there's a lot of like interesting things, right, that come out of all this because like Rhinedottir, right? Rhinedottir in like typical like namesake ways is supposed to be like the daughter of Rhine.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're like, who the fuck is Rhine? You pull out what you just mentioned. And you also know that there's like a Rhine River. So you're like,
Yeah.
they must be related. But then also we know that Dainsleif says something along the lines of like, chalk pursues gold,
Mm-hmm.
which we assume means that like Albedo is trying to like find his master and like find the answer to her question. But it also kind of like pulls into the cataclysm because it says in this time inopportune the eclipse is swallowed by the crimson moon.
Which is weird because shouldn't that be the other way around?
Yeah.
Maybe these 5 sinners are actually people originally from the Crimson Moon dynasty who forced into the Eclipse dynasty when whoever took it over. And then Ermin, they didn't like him. They didn't like the Eclipse dynasty. So when the cataclysm happened, they either helped to cause it or they refused to help because they said, fuck you, Eclipse dynasty.
Oh, I see.
And in which case, you know, with the sinners surviving, it would suggest that the eclipse was destroyed because of the Crimson Moon. So I don't know.
Yeah.
That's really fascinating. Also,
Yeah.
maybe the undying fire in the storybook is about the Bale Moon blood fire, which I'm obsessed with.
Yeah, you are.
Bathed in the Bale Moon.
Bale Moon is blood.
Yeah. So I have decided that I can no longer talk about her. My heart is hurting. I'm just yearning to help and like coddle Albedo. So I'm going to stop us. We're going to move on to our mail session with Kirara, who's now giving me a weird look like, ew.
She really doesn't like you.
Especially when you talk about coddling.
Listen, I tipped her well for the holidays. So, but our first message comes from Sky, and they said, hello, thank you so much for all your episodes. If y'all could have any vision, what would it be and why?
Ooh, I would be one of 2, but I'm really go back and forth on which one it would be. But I would definitely be either Geo or Dendro because I do tend to be like stable, like relatively reliable, which sort of describes Geo, but I'm also curious and sort of science minded. So a little bit of Dendro going on there. So yeah, I go back and forth between those 2.
I think if I had the choice, I would be Electro just because purple. I love purple. I love lightning. I love it all. It's my favorite element to play with, but I would probably be Animo because I have a pocket full of dead friends.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. Barbados, why?
Not like a want on the bottom of that one.
Oh my God. Well then, well, Nat is a Geo character. I don't think that I would be Geo. I think I would be Dendro or Hydro. I do tend to lean a little bit more toward Dendro, probably just because I like vibe so much with Tignari. But I also like the like healer ideals of like a Hydro, and I feel like if I was stuck in a world like this, that would be my role. I'd have to heal. I don't know what else I would do. I'm not a good fighter, as we'll find out in the next question.
Foreshadowing.
Foreshadowing. So, Sky, thank you for the question.
Thanks, Guy.
Our next message comes from Travo, and they said, all right, my question is, out of all the playable characters in Genshin, who are your top 5 characters you can win a hand-to-hand fight against? Fighting dirty is allowed. And then who are the top 5 you think will absolutely destroy you? So I think let's start with the second question first. Who will absolutely destroy you?
Everyone.
Yeah, I was going to say all of them, except maybe the 5 that I could beat.
Let's take one thing into consideration. Are you okay maybe with 5 of them destroying you?
Oh.
Like,
Well, it depends if it's a night after the twink tank. If we're talking about that.
which characters would I kind of be like, okay, if they thrashed me around a little bit? Just saying.
So I can go first on this one. Like I said, everyone, because I'm very weak. But if I had to choose who I think would be best at destroying me in hand to hand, right? That's what the question is.
Yeah,
In
hand to hand.
So I gotta go with Hazo because he actually fights hand to hand with, a little magic included in his punches and kicks. But so Hazo, another one would be Kuching because I react very slowly to things. It's part of my geo nature. I'm just not fast, and I'm always like thinking like a lot about everything, so I just react very slowly. So anyone that's like zippy and fast is going to kick my ass. So I'd say Kuching. There's probably more like Kuki and other people, but I'll say Kuching as the representative for that. And then you have your scary heavy hitters, Arlecchino, Nuvolet, and A. They are all terrifying, and they would all obliterate me.
Okay. And then who are your 5 that you win against?
Okay, so I don't actually think I would win against any of them, but if I had to choose, I would say number 1, Barbara, because I'm just gonna tell her that one of her fans is nearby, and then she's gonna be so concerned with looking nice that she doesn't see it coming. And then number 2, Dory. I'm going to do the same thing, but with Mora. Like, look, here's some money. Bam, got you. Number 3, Ito. I'll make you a deal, Mr. Man. You let me beat you up, I'll bail you out of jail next time you get arrested. Number 4, Layla. Wait till that bitch is passing out. Bam, got you. And then number 5, Traveler. And you know what? Just use that same old distraction method. Hey, I found your sibling. Come closer and I'll tell you exactly where they are.
Oh my God. That's fantastic.
So I'm on the same track as Brandon, where I really do believe that all these characters, for the most part, except for maybe my 5, would kick my ass. So I'm going to handpick which ones get to kick my ass because I'll get some level of masochistic enjoyment from it. I'm gonna go with Risley, Child. I can't do Albedo. It's not his nature. I don't want him to kick my ass. You know what, Moeka? She can kick my ass. Hu Tao, that'd be fun. She'd probably suck my soul out. And then Kaya.
If you're lucky.
The 5 that I think I can take in hand-to-hand combat, Venti. I'm gonna get him drunk first.
That's a good one.
Baiju. I'm gonna take Chong Chong away from him and just smack that out of the park.
Yes, he just like withers into a pile of sickness.
Right. Noelle. Bitch can't become a knight. I must be able to take her. Bennett, because his bad luck will let me win. And if a 5th one, I'm going to say Barbara as well. But I just really think that I could just I took kickboxing for a few years. I think I could really just pop her one and it'd be good. So those are mine.
Just a good old fashioned smackdown on Barbara.
Uppercut, jab.
Yeah.
And then you kick her.
She'll be fine. She can heal herself.
Yeah, exactly. She can revive herself.
I think I will go down the side of who can welcomely destroy me. Definitely be Risley.
You were saying definitely Brandon.
No.
It's like, wow, Brandon.
No,
right.
Brandon.
Tiff would kick my ass.
I would say, Risley, A, Shenhe, Rosaria, and Clorin. Go ahead and try and figure out the where I'm being smushed and smothered by titties and ass. That's all. And I will gladly. I
Yeah,
will
this
lay
sounds
there
like
and
a
take it.
fantasy more than
Yeah, than a
anything.
punishment.
Like, oh no, don't.
Oh no! You're gonna smother me? Don't do it.
Let me just look first.
Yeah. I would say I was like, who could beat me up? Who could I beat up? Who could I really beat up? And in the sadistic, terrible thoughts I had was, I guess I'm beating up the littles. But I was
I
like,
thought that too.
but then I was like, well, I could probably step over them. So, because I'm tall. I'd be like, boop.
Just punting them like footballs.
So I was like, well, I would go after not Klee. She's the literal child. Not Yao Yao. She's a literal child too. But Nahida, Dory, Diona, they're all getting punched. Yansan, I'm gonna take her too. I'm just gonna whip her off with her hair. Little fly around like like from that movie with the what the hell is that movie name? The lady takes the kid by her pigtails and swirls her around.
Oh my god.
Oh, Matilda.
The Matilda, thank you. Yeah.
You could just hide some like spikes in her punching bag when
Yeah.
she goes to the gym. Be like, ah. And then
Yeah,
you just-
I didn't think of the outwitting because the outwitting is definitely a great way to look at it. Like, definitely a great way to get them. Like, I could beat up Guru because I would just have the mailman come by. So he can...
Oh my god.
That same thing will work for Razor.
Well, was that your 5 or was that 4?
Nahida,
That's fine.
Dory.
Just making sure. Just
Yeah, I got
making
5.
sure.
I got
Nahida,
yeah,
Dory,
Yansan was my
Yansan.
5th.
I gotta make sure all the kids are getting their asses kicked.
Yeah. Mind you, that's why I picked a Yansan, not Kachina, because she's a child too. Yansan might be, but she's a gym rat, so she can handle it.
Well, on that note, Travo, thank you so much for the question. I do think that's all the time that we have for today. If you like this episode, please feel free to email us at talesoftevatpod@gmail.com to let us know what you think. And if you hated this episode, you can email us at mailsofmayvot@gmail.com where we won't take the feedback and you will most likely get a bounce back. That being said, you can also follow us on Twitter, Tales of Teyvat, or on Instagram, Tales of Teyvat Pod. We're additionally on Blue Sky and Threads under the same name. And we're on YouTube at Tales of Teyvat Pod. You can also feel free to follow us on Ko-fi, where you can buy us a cup of coffee, but mostly Diet Pepsi, because that's what 2 out of 3 of us drink. And as Meatloaf said, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. You could also check out our merch shop on Ko-fi, where you can buy Tales of Teyvat swaggers. Ew. Tales of Teyvat merch. And I know that we love the hoodie specifically. I've been wearing it in this blistering cold weather. Travelers, next week, we are going to be talking about someone I threatened to beat up tonight. The almost night, Noelle.
She got to win at something.
We'll see how the episode goes. Until then, safe journeys, travelers. We will see you next time.
Bye, witchy nerds. Cast them spells. I got some curses for you.
Oh, I got a lot of curses. Fuck, shit, bitch.
Damn.